Hey guys, it is Barbara from Your Nursing Educator here on Instagram. I am doing my first ever IGTV today on the topic of passing your NCLEX on the first try. So I received quite a bit of direct messages or just comments in general on my tips for passing the NCLEX, how to study, etc. So I figured let's make a video on this and include 10 of my top tips for passing on the first try. I have some notes written down here, so if you see me looking down, that's why. But anyway, starting with tip number 1, start studying as soon as you finish school. So I get asked all the time, should I start studying while I'm in school? Should I take a break after school and then start studying? My personal opinion on this is start studying right when you graduate or right after you finish your last class. If you start studying while you're in nursing school, you're going to feel too overwhelmed with everything going on, and the studying that you do for the NCLEX may not actually be too beneficial for you just because your mind is kind of all over the place. And then if you wait a bit too long after nursing school, you'll lose motivation, and then you'll start to also forget what you did learn in nursing school. So for me, I highly suggest just finishing nursing school, and then the day that you finish your last class, just go right into the NCLEX studying. You have the motivation, you now have the time, you just want to get your RN license, and I feel like that's probably the best time to start your studying. Tip number 2 is stick to a strict study schedule. What I personally did was make a calendar. I blocked out any days that I had work or I had any important events. And then literally every single other day that I had off, I spent with my Saunders textbook and UWorld. So I literally just spent every day almost for 2 months just studying for the NCLEX. I found that I had this end goal in mind. I wrote out the study schedule right at the beginning of my studying. I wanted to stick to it. I wanted to meet my goal. And by writing out what I was studying every single day, I kind of had that goal to meet, and some days I studied a bit more than others, but overall I stuck to the study schedule, and I felt like it just helped keep everything at bay, and it helped with my studying quite a bit. And then to go along with this tip, when you are studying, make sure that you're focused on your studying and you don't have all these distractions going on. So you aren't on your phone, you're not browsing the internet, you're not doing online shopping. I suggest either leaving your phone at home or leaving it in another room. And as for the internet, I think there are actually apps that you can download that prevent you from using the internet, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, when you're studying, focus on the studying, don't get distracted, because then it's a little bit pointless, to be honest. Tip number 3 is don't use too many resources. And the reason I say this is that having 4, 5, 6, 7 different resources can get overwhelming, especially if you start seeing little differences in the resources. I know almost every single resource has different lab values listed in them, so stick to maybe 1 textbook, 1 or 2 test banks, and you should be good. You don't want to overwhelm yourself with all these different resources and just get too stressed out when you don't have to be. So the resources I used: the Saunders NCLEX textbook, UWorld test bank, and then I found another test bank near the end of my studying online, and I just went through that just for some more practice questions. Tip number 4 is use UWorld as your test bank. If you don't know what UWorld is, it is an NCLEX test bank, test prep kind of thing. Basically has thousands of questions that you write and read the rationales of, and you practice taking the NCLEX. Basically, they have an option where you can write a mock NCLEX test, and they tell you your likelihood of passing the NCLEX, which is actually a really neat feature that they have. A few other features they have that I really enjoyed was the fact that their NCLEX questions look exactly like the ones on the real NCLEX. So the layout of the page is exactly like the real NCLEX, so you're kind of familiar with the NCLEX before you even write it. The questions on UWorld are a lot harder than the real NCLEX, so it kind of helps you build up that critical thinking. It kind of gets you working a bit harder, and then by the time you write the real NCLEX, you're pleasantly surprised with the questions that you get. And then the last thing I'll mention about UWorld is the rationales that they have. The rationales that they give you are A+, to be honest. They're very detailed. They provide you everything that you need to know. They give you diagrams, definitions, keywords, whatever. But their rationales are really, really good. I definitely enjoyed them, and I'll speak about them a little bit more later on in the video. Tip number 5 is to stick to studying high yield topics. So there's absolutely no way that you're going to be able to study every single topic when you're studying for the NCLEX. So stick to the topics that the NCLEX likes to ask students. That's what's meant by high yield topics, is the topics that the NCLEX is known for testing students on. So my study guide, actually, it's linked in my bio, but the study guide that I made includes all of the high yield topics you need to know for the NCLEX. So if you're interested in that, you can go click in the bio of my Instagram and purchase that. But anyway, you can't spend all of your time studying every single detail. You need to be selective with your studying. Studying things like safety and delegation over the side effects of a medication is a smart move. You need to make the most of your studying, so might as well study what the NCLEX is probably going to test you on. Tip number 6 is the more practice questions you do, the better. This is probably my number 1 tip, just because yes, you need to understand the material, yes, you need to learn certain things, but that's kind of what nursing school was for. When you're preparing for the NCLEX, you need to just write as many questions as you can. I swear that's probably the best study tip. If you're weak in certain areas, practice only those study questions. If you're weak with select all that apply questions, practice those kind of questions. It just gets you into the mindset of writing the NCLEX. And the more you do, the better you'll get at them, I promise you. And then don't just practice the questions. You need to read over the rationales as well, just to understand the reasoning for the correct answer. Tip number 7 is don't overdo it to the point of exhaustion. So if you're feeling so overworked, so overwhelmed, studying more really isn't going to be beneficial at that point, just because you won't be able to absorb everything that you're reading or writing. Take a day off. What I personally did to avoid exhaustion and crashing and burning or whatever is I would study for an hour, take a 15-minute break, and then get back to my studying. So regardless of if I was actually overwhelmed or tired of studying, I would take that 15-minute break every single time. And I think that's what really helped me not burn out through the 2 months of studying that I did. Tip number 8 is don't reschedule your NCLEX exam. This is something I actually get asked about quite a bit. Students are nervous, they feel anxious about writing the test, they don't feel like they prepared enough. Don't reschedule. You're just going to make yourself even more anxious. Unless you truly feel like you are underprepared, don't reschedule it. We all feel nervous, we all feel anxious about writing it. But I mean, you spent 1 to 2 months studying for this exam, you're going to do just fine. You're just psyching yourself out at this point. You need to just do it, write it. I promise you it's going to be good. Tip number 9 is review what you've learned the previous weeks. So what I did was every Sunday, I would read through the rationales that I wrote out from UWorld the previous week. This ensured that I wasn't forgetting information that I learned the previous weeks. It was a nice, chill study day. So every Sunday, I just spent reading through my rationales. I wasn't doing really too many questions or readings. Just a refresher of what I learned last week. The last thing you want to do is finally grasp a topic and then 4 or 5 weeks later, not remember it. And this leads me to my very last tip, my NCLEX binder, which is what I kept all of my UWorld rationales in. I actually brought it over here. She's thick. So this binder includes quite a bit of things, mostly UWorld rationales, my study calendar, and then the NCLEX study guide over here. So the NCLEX study guide, I'll show you guys, basically goes through all high yield topics, gives you priority concepts that you have to know from that topic, etc. It's linked in my bio, like I said. I have my study schedule here where I wrote out what topics I want to study, how many questions I want to get done that day. Highly recommend that. And then I split up the rest of my binder into different sections. So I have fundamentals, maternity, pediatrics, mental health, pharmacology. And then within those sections is where I would write out the UWorld rationales. A lot of people think that I wrote out the rationale word for word, which is definitely not the case. I wrote out the key points of the rationale. So for example, I have this over here for seizures. I have the Glasgow Coma Scale, TPN. Just, it doesn't have to be so in-depth, but it needs to be the priority points of that topic, right? So all my rationales are in here. I would basically write 10 UWorld questions, write out those rationales, take a break, write 10 UWorld questions, write the rationales, take a break. And then every Sunday I would review all of these rationales just to make sure I wasn't forgetting anything. But that wraps up the 10 tips I have for passing the NCLEX on your first try. I hope you guys found this beneficial. The next IGTV I want to do is actually on nurse aesthetic injectors and how I got myself into that field. So if you want to see that for my next IGTV, leave a comment down below and let me know if you have any questions or what you'd like to hear in the video. So I will talk to you guys next time. Hope you enjoyed. Bye.